Welcome to Peter Legge Podcast, where you're empowered to lead, inspire, and influence.
My guest for this 15 minutes is Leona Pinsky. You're a lawyer by trade, but tell me what you do with your foundation.
I'm the chair of the board of directors for an organization called Cystic Fibrosis Canada. And I'm involved with that charity because my youngest child, Irina, who's 22 years old, lives with cystic fibrosis. And we're a Canadian health charity that advocates for the 4,400 Canadians living with cystic fibrosis.
So now I'm going to ask you some questions because I don't know the answers. So I'm assuming there's a lot of people like me watching this that don't know the answers. How do you get cystic fibrosis?
Well, Peter, you'd be in the same position I was in when my daughter was born. Most people don't know what cystic fibrosis is until it affects their family. It's a genetic disease. It's one of those diseases where both parents have to be carriers because you have a gene that works and a gene that's defective, and both parents have to pass on the defective gene to their child. It's the type of disease where most people don't know that they're carriers. Neither my husband or I had any family history of cystic fibrosis. So when our daughter was born as our fourth child after 3 healthy children, it came as quite a shock that we were carriers of this genetic disease.
So when you say you didn't know, there was absolutely no symptoms in either you or your husband's lifestyle that said there's something going on inside me?
No, nothing for either of us. And that's how it is with carriers. You have a defective gene and a normally functioning gene, and your normally functioning gene compensates for the defective one.
Can you be tested for this?
Yes, you can. In Canada, we aren't tested for cystic fibrosis unless we have a family history. So, for example, in our circumstance, now that we know it's in the family, all of our nieces and nephews and cousins and brothers and sisters and everyone has been tested, and they'll have more information. But for most people, a diagnosis of cystic fibrosis comes right out of the blue when they have a baby who's found on newborn screening.
So how many people across Canada would have this?
So because the life expectancy historically was quite short, in 1960, most people with CF passed away before they could attend school. We don't have a lot of older people with cystic fibrosis. We have 4,400 people across the country, so 4,400, but only about 16% are over the age of 40.
Okay. So when you and your husband were carriers but had no idea.
That's right.
So you had your beautiful baby girl. Mm-hmm. At what point did she show these signs?
In our case, in about 20% of circumstances, it presents right at birth. And that was the situation with our daughter. She required surgery within a few hours of life to correct some abdominal issues. So that happens in about 20% of cases. In the rest of cases, now in Canada, we have something called newborn screening. So parents would find out within the first month or two that their baby had this disease.
But going back to you and your husband, nothing felt out of place with either of you for you to get pre-checked.
Nothing.
Obviously not.
There was nothing, and labor and delivery, everything was perfectly normal until our daughter was born. Yeah.
Do you have other children?
Yes, I have 3 older children who are healthy.
So is there any rationale as to why they don't have it and this young daughter?
Yeah, because in the other cases, we either both passed on our good gene, or if one of us passed on our bad gene, the other one passed on the good gene. So
wow.
It's a roll of the dice every time. When 2 carriers have a child, there's a 1 in 4 chance with every pregnancy. And just our number came up with our youngest.
And you say there's about 4,400, if I heard you correctly, in Canada that are carriers of this?
No, that have cystic fibrosis.
That have it, okay.
1 in 25 of us is a carrier. It's the most common fatal genetic disease.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be screened ahead of time without really having any symptoms? You obviously, you and your husband had no idea, but have you had some thoughts? Could you have been screened by some organization in Canada?
If you have a family history, you can have genetic testing before you have children to see if you're a carrier. And that's certainly what our extended family would do now that we have the information. But for most people, but we've made tremendous progress. The difficulty with cystic fibrosis is it's a multi-system disorder. So people associate it with the lungs, but it affects digestive system, reproductive organs, sinuses. It's really quite an all-encompassing disease. And the treatment is extremely time-consuming. For healthy people, it's over 2 hours a day, just every day doing breathing treatments. And my daughter takes over 50 pills a day. People have to do intravenous antibiotics a lot of the time. It's the burden of care is very high for CF. And so one of the things we're trying to do besides fund for a cure and better treatments is to find treatments that are less time consuming so that people will have the opportunity to live a more normal life.
Okay, let's turn our attention to your gala, your 65 Roses Gala. You explained to me where you came up with the 65, but it's very catching. Tell us about the 65 Roses Gala, how you came up with that idea, and exactly what your intent on that evening is.
Sure. A lot of children have difficulty saying cystic fibrosis. It's quite a mouthful for a young child. And there's a story about a young boy who had the disease, who was 4 or 5, who told his mother that he had 65 roses rather than cystic fibrosis. And that's become, quite a catchphrase in the cystic fibrosis community in the English-speaking world. 2001, I guess, 19 years ago, because this would be our 20th gala, I was with another cystic fibrosis mom, Lisa Brennan, and we decided we should have some kind of a party to raise money. We could invite our friends and we could raise some money for cystic fibrosis. And at that point, we thought maybe we could make $10,000. And we ended up that first year making over $100,000. We had 325 people at the Pan Pacific. It was a brilliant evening and the gala was born. And since then, we've raised over $4.5 million for cystic fibrosis research and treatment here in Canada, much of it here in Vancouver. This year was to be our big 20th anniversary blowout, but COVID being what it is, we've moved to a virtual format, and it's called the 65 Roses 6 Feet Away Soiree. It's on November 7th from 6:30 to 7:30, and a very popular singer named Dan Mangan is going to be joining us for a few songs, and we have donated wine, and we'll have a sommelier wine tasting and silent auction and some of the usual things you'd have at a gala, but only we'll be doing it virtually this year.
Under normal circumstances, how many people would come to the gala, and how could you attract that audience or even a bigger audience on this virtual 65 Roses evening?
Typical gala might be between 350 and 400 people. This year is going to be interesting. There's a lot of, we've had to rebrand and redevelop the entire concept. So I'm not sure how many people we'll get. On the plus side, I'm inviting all of my relatives across the country and around the world, actually. So on the one hand, we might have an even bigger audience, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Is there an easy way for people to donate to you?
Yes, if you Google the 6 Feet Away Soiree or Vancouver 65 Roses Gala, our ticket site will come up, and there's a way to either buy tickets. Tickets are only $30 to join the evening. There are packages you can get that are a little bit more, that have wine and charcuterie and cheese you can enjoy in your home while you're watching. And you can also make a donation online there.
And obviously get a charitable receipt and help
yes.
those people less fortunate than most people are.
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been doing this?
Well, I remember our first meeting with Cystic Fibrosis Canada. My daughter was still in hospital. She was 6 months old. And I remember we got a babysitter for the other kids, so my husband could go to one of the first meetings, because we really knew early on that Rena's best chance at as long a life as possible and a healthy life as possible depended on research. And that if we didn't step up and help raise money, who else was going to do it? There was nobody more committed than parents of a child that was quite critical, even at 6 months old, was quite critically ill. So I would say we got involved within 6 months of her birth. So that would be almost 22 years ago now. And gone from, taking coin boxes to liquor store to now being the chair of the National Board of Directors. So it's been an interesting and it's very fulfilling. I find it very fulfilling. Yeah.
So how do you keep your powerful personality?
Oh, my family probably wishes I was a little less powerful. I look at my daughter and I look at these people with CF and they never complain. They have such a heavy burden of care and pain and discomfort, and even a good day for them is not good. And most of them are so positive and really underplay their symptoms and just try to take life and get everything they can out of it. And when you see that and you see them doing that, it's pretty hard not to do everything you can to help them. I remember one time my daughter came home from camp. She was about 14 years old, and I had to tell her that somebody she knew who was a little older than her had died from cystic fibrosis. And she was very devastated. And then she just kind of wiped her little face and she said, Mom, people with CF, we don't live as long as other people, and we have to make every day count. And so when I heard her say that, that's the kind of thing that keeps me going. I have to do everything I can. And I'm proud to say my other children do as well. My older children who don't have cystic fibrosis are all very involved in raising money and helping other people with CF. So we've been lucky.
As we come to the conclusion of this chat, what one or two things have I not asked you that you would like to tell people?
So when my daughter was born in 1998, she had her life expectancy, she had a 50% chance of living to age 32. And a baby born tomorrow at BC Children's Hospital or BC Women's Hospital with cystic fibrosis will have a 50% chance of living to age 50. So we have made tremendous progress in the last 20 years, but it's not enough. We're not done. Having a 50% chance of only living to age 50 is not good enough. We're still losing people. We're still having people that are unable to work or whose disease burden is too heavy for them to really participate in very much of life. And we want to make that different. We want to make it so that everybody can have an unlimited life, can do just whatever you and I do whatever they want. And that's my goal for everybody living with cystic fibrosis.
What one thing could everyone do who's watching this podcast and Zoom? What could they do for you today? What action could they take today that would be beneficial to you and your organization?
Like most organizations, we've been hit very, very hard by the pandemic. We rely a lot on volunteers and on in-person events to raise money. So our revenues are down approximately 50% this year, and we're not unlike other charities that way. So the one thing people could do is continue to support us, either by supporting the 6 Feet Away soiree or by going on the Cystic Fibrosis Canada website and making a donation. Every donation really helps right now.
Now, we ran a full page ad last week in one of our magazines, and hopefully we can do that for you for the next couple of weeks until you have this event. What else could somebody do for you? What action could they take today besides writing a check for $1,000 to you? What else could they do?
Well, as I said, buying a ticket to the gala. Also, we're desperately trying to get some very expensive new drugs to Canada. And if people are interested in becoming involved in our advocacy efforts, there's a lot of information on that on the website. Some people aren't comfortable fundraising. They're more comfortable doing advocacy for some of the political things we need to accomplish. So that's also all available on Cystic Fibrosis Canada's website.
Okay. You have been a fabulous guest. You've been articulate, you've been strong, you haven't been negative, you've been positive. There is a future for people that have this situation, this disease, and you sound to me like you're the right person to manage it for the country. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
My pleasure. Thanks, Leona.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Peter Legge Podcast. If you'd like to support this podcast, please log on to peterlegge.com.